My daughter-in-law thought my home was her stage, and I was her unpaid help. She planned a Christmas party for 25 people without even asking me. That betrayal lit a fire in me I never thought I had. Hello, everyone. My name's Ruth Patterson, and before I start, I want to know, where are you watching from tonight? I love hearing from people all over. It reminds me how small this world can be when we share our stories. Now, let me tell you about the Christmas that changed everything. It was a chilly morning in early December. I was sitting at the kitchen table with my cup of cinnamon tea, watching the fog roll off the backyard fence, when Melissa, my daughter-in-law, came bouncing down the stairs like she was walking onto a talk show stage. She had that bright, practiced smile she always wore when she was about to say something I wouldn't like. "Ruth," she said, in that sing-song voice of hers, "just wanted to let you know. My family's going to celebrate Christmas here this year. It'll just be around 20, maybe 25 people." I blinked. "Here?" I asked, setting my cup down slowly. "In this house?" "Of course," she chirped. "You've got the space, and everyone just loves your kitchen. I already told my mom she could bring the turkey and my brother's handling music. You don't have to worry about a thing." She said it like she was doing me a favor. But what she really meant was, you don't have a say. My heart gave that heavy, familiar drop, the kind that comes when you realize you've been dismissed again. You see, I wasn't some guest in that house. I was the one who helped buy it. After retiring from 35 years as a school principal, I sold my home, the one my late husband and I built together, to help Daniel, my only son, make a down payment on this place. When Melissa and Daniel married, she suggested I move in for company. I thought it was love talking. Maybe it was convenience. The first year was fine. Melissa smiled sweetly, offered me tea, asked about my garden. But as time went on, her tone changed. She started calling it her kitchen, her living room. She'd move my things into storage to make space. And I, trying to keep peace, let it slide until that morning. She leaned against the counter, scrolling on her phone, her words cutting like tiny, careless knives. "I already sent the invites. Oh, and the caterer will come by next week for a walkthrough. You'll love it, Ruth. I'm thinking gold and white theme this year." I looked at her. Not angry, not yet. Just tired. So tired of being treated like a piece of old furniture she couldn't quite get rid of. I said quietly, "Did Daniel agree to this?" She waved her hand, still smiling. "He's fine with it. We talked last night. Don't stress. You just relax and enjoy the show." Enjoy the show. She had no idea that the woman standing in front of her had directed plenty of shows in her life. School plays, fundraisers, even the chaos of teenage classrooms. I knew exactly how to sit still and let someone think they were in charge. Until it was time to take the stage myself. I took a deep breath and smiled, that calm, slow smile that used to make my students stop misbehaving. "Perfect," I said softly. "I'm taking a vacation that week." Melissa froze. "What?" I leaned back in my chair. "You said it'll just be 25 people, right? That's perfect. You won't need me here." Her smile twitched. "Oh, don't be silly. It's your home too. You can't just leave on Christmas." "I can," I said, taking another sip of tea. "And I will." The silence that followed was thick as honey. She laughed, a little too loudly. "You're joking." I smiled again. "You'll see." When she finally left the room, still muttering something about overreacting, I opened my laptop. The glow of the screen hit my face, and for the first time in years, I felt that little spark of independence again, the one I thought I'd lost somewhere between compromise and politeness. Melissa thought she was hosting a party. She had no idea I was about to host a reckoning. As the clock ticked and the fog outside began to lift, I whispered to myself, "This Christmas, Ruth, you're not serving anyone. Not this time." That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay in bed staring at the ceiling fan, listening to the faint hum of Melissa's laughter from the living room, the sound of her heels clicking across the hardwood, her voice full of confidence, full of ownership. It wasn't the first time she'd made me feel like a guest in my own home, but it was the first time I finally admitted it to myself. I remember when she first moved in. Daniel had just gotten married. He was glowing, so happy, so sure he'd found the perfect woman. Melissa was polite at first, all smiles, soft words, little compliments. "Oh, Ruth, your home is so cozy," she'd say, touching things gently, pretending she admired my way of living. But within months, things started shifting. The photos of me and my late husband disappeared from the hallway walls, replaced by prints of beaches and city skylines. The antique vase I'd owned for 40 years, gone, accidentally chipped. Even the floral curtains I'd sewn myself were replaced by long gray drapes. I told myself, she's just making the house feel like her home. I wanted to be understanding. I wanted Daniel's marriage to work. But sometimes understanding becomes surrender. One evening, last year, her mother and sister came over for dinner. I'd cooked roasted chicken, mashed potatoes, green beans with almonds, all my son's favorites. Melissa didn't even look at me. She stood at the head of the table, waving her manicured hand. "Mom, I told Ruth she doesn't have to worry about cooking next time. I'll order catering. It's just easier for everyone." Everyone. That word stung. Daniel chuckled awkwardly. I smiled because that's what I'd trained myself to do. I smiled even when they used my good china without asking. I smiled even when I was told to sit while they cleaned up, and they just piled everything into the dishwasher, scraping my careful order apart. That's what women like me are taught. Keep the peace. We fold our anger into napkins and tuck it under our plates. But tonight, as I lay there in the dark, I felt something shift. I got up, slipped on my robe, and walked into the kitchen. The air smelled faintly of Melissa's perfume, floral and sharp, like fake roses and vinegar. On the counter sat her notebook. Christmas party, 25 guests. She'd already listed everything: table settings, champagne orders, seating charts. There wasn't a single mention of me, not ask Ruth about decorations, not use Ruth's old recipe for apple pie, not even make sure Ruth's okay with this. I stood there for a long time, staring at that page. My hands trembled, not with sadness, but with clarity. They didn't see me anymore. Not as a mother, not as a woman, not even as a person who deserved to be asked. And I realized that wasn't entirely their fault, because I'd stopped demanding to be seen. I sat at the table, opened my planner, and began writing. Not a grocery list, not a to-do, but something I hadn't written in years. Things I want for myself. It felt almost strange the way the pen moved, like my hand had forgotten how to write in the first person. 1. Peace. 2. Independence. 3. Space that belongs to me. By the time I put the pen down, the clock read 1:40 a.m. Outside, the wind was picking up, the kind of cold that carries whispers. I whispered back, "It's time." The next morning, I made coffee for myself, just 1 cup, no extras for anyone else. I sat by the window, scrolling on my old laptop, looking up places near the coast. Somewhere quiet, somewhere where no one would ask me for anything. Then, by chance, I found it. A little cottage listed by a church friend named Lorraine. It overlooked the water, had a fireplace, and was available the exact week of Christmas. When I called, Lorraine answered with her soft, familiar voice. "Ruth, I didn't expect to hear from you. Do you still have that cottage available?" I asked. "For you, sweetheart?" "Always. Need a getaway?" I smiled, for real this time. Something like that. We talked about logistics, deposit, keys, dates. When I hung up, I felt light, free. I leaned back, listening to the morning silence, and said to myself, they wanted me to stay quiet. Fine, I'll let silence speak for me. That evening, Daniel came home tired, loosening his tie. "Hey, Mom, Melissa told me about Christmas. You're okay with it, right?" I looked up from my book and said, "Completely. I'm actually going away that week." He frowned. "Going away? Where?" "Oh, just somewhere peaceful." He chuckled. "You sure?" Melissa's mom's bringing her famous ham. You'll miss out." I smiled faintly. "I think I'll survive." He didn't understand. He wouldn't, not yet. But soon, they both would. The morning after I booked the cottage, I felt lighter than I had in years. It wasn't excitement. Not exactly. It was something quieter, stronger. A calm sort of rebellion humming under my ribs. I made myself a proper breakfast. Eggs, toast, and the last jar of my homemade apple jam. Melissa had once told me, half laughing, that my jam wasn't Instagram-worthy. I spread it thick on my toast and smiled anyway. That day, I decided to keep my plans entirely to myself. For the next week, I went about life as usual, folding laundry, watering the poinsettias, pretending to watch television while Melissa paraded in and out with swatches of gold ribbon and boxes labeled holiday glam. She'd taken full command of the house. There were already 4 boxes of decorations stacked in the hallway, and she'd started rearranging the furniture to make space for guests. She never once asked if I wanted to keep the nativity set that belonged to my mother. She just tucked it into a cardboard box, marked it miscellaneous, and shoved it under the stairs. Every move she made was a tiny erasure. But this time, I didn't stop her. I watched, nodded, and smiled when she caught my eye, because I already knew something she didn't. That Sunday after church, I stopped by the parish office to see Lorraine in person. She greeted me with that warm, knowing smile older women give one another when they sense something brewing beneath the surface. "I take it this vacation isn't just about the view?" she asked softly, pouring us tea. I smiled. "Let's just say I'm finally giving myself a break." "Well," she said, leaning back, "that cottage is ready for you. Clean linens, fireplace stocked, just you and the sea." I hesitated before asking, "Do you still run that little community rental board online? The one for church members and families traveling through town?" Her eyes twinkled. "I do. Why?" I took a sip of tea, letting the silence do its work. "Would you happen to know a nice family? Maybe someone looking for a last-minute place to stay over Christmas? A family that's respectful?" Lorraine raised an eyebrow, and then she smiled the kind of smile only a woman who's lived a full life can give. "I think I know just the couple." By the following Wednesday, everything was arranged. Lorraine had connected me with a quiet pair, Martha and Henry Lewis, traveling cross-country to spend the holidays near their grandchildren. Their lodging had fallen through, and they were desperate for a place. I offered them my portion of the house, the one that, legally, I still co-owned with Daniel. When we spoke on the phone, Martha sounded gentle, almost apologetic. "Are you sure it's okay, Mrs. Patterson? We don't want to intrude." "Oh, I insist," I said, meaning every word. "You'll be doing me a favor." We handled everything properly. Paperwork, signatures, even a small security deposit. It was all neat and official. I told them they could move in the day before Christmas Eve. Meanwhile, back at home, Melissa was thriving in chaos. Every day brought more deliveries, garlands, glass ornaments, catering menus. One evening, she came to me in the kitchen, laughing. "Ruth, can you believe this caterer charges extra for plating? We'll just use your dinner set, right? It's vintage, so classy." "My dinner set?" I asked, arching a brow. "Yeah, the blue porcelain one. It'll photograph beautifully." I took a long breath, smiled sweetly, and said, "Sure, Melissa. Whatever you think is best." Inside, I was laughing, because I already knew she'd never get the chance to use them. The days moved quickly. I started packing my small suitcase, wool sweaters, a novel I'd been saving for years, my husband's old scarf. As I folded my things, I felt something shift inside me, the heavy weight of guilt lifting, replaced by quiet clarity. For years, I'd mistaken endurance for grace. I'd thought holding my tongue was strength, but sometimes silence isn't noble. It's just permission for people to walk all over you. On the night before I was set to leave, I overheard something that burned deep. Melissa was in the living room with Daniel, laughing softly. "She's really going on vacation," she scoffed. Daniel's voice was weary. "Just let her. She needs space. You know how Mom gets." "How Mom gets?" she repeated, mocking. "Daniel, she's been weird lately. I bet she'll get lonely and come back before Christmas anyway," he chuckled. "Probably. She always comes around." Their laughter felt like tiny knives in the dark, but instead of crying, like I might have done once, I smiled, because they were about to learn that when a woman like me says she's leaving, she means it. The next morning, before sunrise, I left a note on the counter. It read simply, "The house is yours, just not the way you think. Merry Christmas, Ruth." I folded it neatly, placed it under the crystal salt shaker, the one Melissa hated, and wheeled my suitcase to the door. The air outside was cold, sharp, honest. I didn't look back. The morning I left, the sky was still gray and heavy with clouds, the kind of light that makes the world look half asleep. I moved quietly, careful not to wake anyone. The OE kettle hissed low as I poured myself a final cup of tea, the last one I'd drink in that kitchen for a long time. I stood there, looking around, at the walls I'd painted, the curtains I'd sewn, the table where so many birthdays had been celebrated. Every inch of the house carried my touch, and yet somehow I no longer belonged there. My suitcase waited by the door. I'd packed light, a few sweaters, my journal, one pair of shoes, and my husband's old scarf. He used to tell me, "Ruth, never let anyone make you small in your own home." It took me a lifetime to finally understand what he meant. Just as I was slipping on my coat, Melissa's voice floated down from the stairs. "You're really going through with it?" she asked, rubbing sleep from her eyes. I turned and smiled. "Good morning to you, too." She leaned on the railing, her silk robe tied tight, expression caught between disbelief and irritation. "You're leaving the day before Christmas Eve?" "That's right," I said, calm as ever. She let out a short laugh. "You'll regret it when you're sitting somewhere all alone. We could have used your help, Ruth." I picked up my suitcase. "I'm sure you'll manage just fine without me. After all, you're the host." The word host landed like a pebble dropped in a still pond. Small, but it rippled. Her smile faltered. "You're serious." "Dead serious," I said, walking past her toward the front door. "Where are you even going?" she demanded. "Somewhere quiet." I didn't give her more than that. As I stepped out, she called after me, "Don't expect me to clean up your room when you get back." I turned slightly, the cold air biting my cheeks. "Don't worry, Melissa, you won't have to." Then I shut the door behind me. The bus station was nearly empty. I found a seat by the window and watched as the town rolled by. The bakery where Daniel used to buy me cupcakes on Mother's Day, the old school where I taught, now covered in murals. The world kept moving, indifferent to my absence, and that was strangely comforting. By the time I reached the coast, the air had changed. It smelled like salt and pine and distance. Freedom, if freedom had a scent. The cottage was small, painted pale blue with white shutters, sitting on a rise above the shoreline. Lorraine had left the key under a ceramic angel by the door, just like she said. Inside, everything was simple. One cozy armchair, a fireplace already stacked with wood, a small table for two. I dropped my bag, lit the fire, and for the first time in years, listened to silence. Not the heavy silence of being ignored, the kind that breathes, the kind that heals. That evening, as I wrapped myself in a blanket and watched the waves crash against the shore, my phone buzzed. "Daniel." I let it ring once, twice. Then I picked up. "Mom, where are you?" "Somewhere peaceful," I said, smiling at the ocean. He sighed. "Melissa's panicking about the party. You could have told us you were serious." "I did tell you," I said softly. "You just didn't believe me." "Come on, Mom," he said, trying to sound patient. "It's Christmas." "It still is," I said, "just not there." There was silence on the line and then a small sound, the kind people make when they realize they can't argue with calmness. Finally, he said, "Fine, we'll manage." "I know you will," I replied. "Merry Christmas, Daniel." And I ended the call. That night, I slept deeply. No footsteps above me, no voices talking over the television, no one rearranging my life while pretending to include me in it. Just the sound of wind against the windows and the faint crackle of the fire. Meanwhile, miles away, in the house that used to be mine, Melissa was in full command. Or so she thought. The caterers were confirming their schedules. The tables were arriving in the morning. Her family's cars were already packed with gifts and dishes. She laughed with her mother on the phone, saying, "Oh, Ruth went off on some little trip, but it's fine. We'll handle everything." She had no idea what was about to come through that front door. By the time the sun rose the next morning, I was standing on the cottage porch, coffee in hand, watching the waves catch fire under the dawn light. I whispered, "Merry Christmas, Ruth." For the first time in a long time, I said my own name like it mattered. And somewhere, in the house I'd left behind, the doorbell rang. When I woke that Christmas Eve morning, the ocean outside was restless and alive. Pale waves rolling against the rocks, the wind carrying salt and the faint scent of pine. I brewed a cup of coffee and wrapped myself in my husband's old scarf. The cottage was warm, quiet, filled with a peace I hadn't known in years. Somewhere, miles away, Melissa's perfect little empire was about to crack. At exactly 10:00 a.m., the doorbell rang at the house I used to call home. Melissa, wearing a velvet robe and her hair wrapped in curlers, rushed down the stairs. She must have thought it was the caterers. But when she opened the door, she froze. On the porch stood a couple in their 60s, Henry and Martha Lewis, with 2 suitcases and a small bouquet of poinsettias in hand. They smiled warmly. "Good morning," Martha said cheerfully. "We're the Lewises. You must be Melissa." Melissa blinked. "Excuse me?" Henry held up a folder. "We're here for the house. Mrs. Ruth Patterson arranged it. Said we could stay for the week?" At first, Melissa laughed. "There's some mistake. This is our home. My mother's catering team is on the way." But then Martha opened the folder. Inside was a signed rental agreement with my name printed clearly at the bottom, along with proof of the security deposit and church references from Lorraine's network. Melissa's smile vanished. "Wait here," she muttered and stormed inside, calling for Daniel. Daniel came down moments later, hair unkempt, still half asleep. "What's going on?" Melissa shoved the papers at him. "Apparently your mother rented out the house." He scanned the documents, his expression darkening. This is her signature, but that's impossible." Martha spoke kindly. "I promise, Mr. Patterson, we wouldn't have come if it weren't legitimate. We were told the lower level and guest rooms were available. We even brought our own groceries." Melissa's face turned red. "This can't be happening. My family's coming in 3 hours." Henry frowned slightly. "Well, I'm sorry, ma'am, but we have a contract, and we've traveled a long way." Daniel rubbed his temples. "Melissa, let me call Mom. I'll fix this." He dialed my number, and somewhere in that cozy seaside cottage, my phone lit up on the nightstand. I glanced at it once, saw Daniel calling, and then turned it face down. The fire crackled softly. The waves rolled in. I took another sip of coffee. Back at the house, Melissa was pacing furiously. "She's ignoring you. She's actually ignoring you, Daniel." "I'll try again later," he muttered. "Maybe she'll come back soon." But as the minutes passed, the situation worsened. The caterers arrived next, parking their van across the driveway. Then came Melissa's parents, her cousins, and her brother's family, all carrying food and gifts, chattering excitedly about the big party. Melissa tried to smile, ushering them in, only to find the Lewises unpacking their coats in the guest room. "Who are they?" her mother whispered. "People my mother-in-law rented the house to," Melissa hissed under her breath. Her mother blinked. "You're joking." "I wish I were." The guests started whispering. Daniel was on the phone, pacing in the kitchen, muttering, "Mom, pick up, please." Martha, trying to ease the tension, said, "We can share the space if that helps. We won't be in your way." But the house wasn't built for sharing between 2 families, especially not with 25 people and a full catering setup. Within an hour, the place was chaos. Dishes clattering, people talking over one another, children running through hallways, Melissa's relatives glaring at strangers in their pajamas. The caterers refused to unload without clarification. The decorator refused to set up with unapproved guests in the living room. Melissa's dream Christmas had turned into a farce. Meanwhile, I sat by the window in the cottage, watching gulls dance in the wind. I wrote in my journal, "Peace doesn't come when people apologize. It comes when you stop needing them to." I thought of the noise, the tension, the endless, small humiliations. Then I smiled, closed my notebook, and decided to bake cookies, just for me. No one hovering, no one commenting, no one telling me how I should do things. Just the sound of the oven ticking warm and steady. Back at the house, Melissa's last shred of patience broke when one of her cousins whispered, "Did Ruth really rent out the place?" "Oh, honey, that's brilliant," she snapped. "Everyone, stop laughing. This isn't funny." Daniel tried to calm her, but the damage was done. Guests started leaving. The catering team packed up. Even her mother sighed, muttering, "I told you not to plan something so big." Melissa stood in the middle of the wreckage, garlands half hung, trays untouched, and strangers politely trying to stay out of her way, realizing the house she'd tried to claim wasn't hers to control. That night, she finally got through to me. "Ruth," she said, her voice tight with anger. "What did you do?" I answered calmly. "You said your family was celebrating there, didn't you? I just made sure someone enjoyed it." "You rented our home." "Our," I said softly, "is a strong word." She went silent. I could almost hear the realization sinking in. Then I added, "Melissa, Christmas is about gratitude. Maybe this year you'll find some." And before she could respond, I ended the call. I placed my phone aside, watched the fireplace flicker, and whispered, "Merry Christmas to me." The sea that morning looked like liquid silver, soft ripples catching the first light of dawn. I stood on the porch of the cottage, my hands wrapped around a mug of steaming tea, and breathed in air that didn't belong to anyone but me. For the first time in years, no one was calling my name from another room. No one was telling me what to cook, what to clean, or what to move. It was just me, the sea, and silence, the kind that doesn't ache, but heals. Christmas Eve had passed in peace. The fire had burned slow, and I'd fallen asleep with a book in my lap and a calm heart in my chest. But on Christmas morning, my phone buzzed. I glanced at the screen, Daniel. For a second, I hesitated. Then I answered. "Mom," he said softly. The tone in his voice was different, careful, tender. "Merry Christmas." "Merry Christmas, Daniel." Behind him, I heard the faint crackle of a fireplace and soft holiday music. Then the screen shifted, and I saw the house, my house. But it was quiet. No crowd, no decorations piled high, no chaos. Just the faint glow of a modest tree, a table set for two, and calm. Melissa appeared behind him, her face pale, tired but softer somehow. There were no fancy curls, no perfect makeup, just a woman stripped of pride. She stepped closer and spoke quietly. "Ruth, I just wanted to say I'm sorry." I stayed silent. Sometimes silence says more than words ever can. She swallowed hard and went on. "I was wrong. About everything. I thought making the house mine would make me feel important, but it only made me lose sight of what mattered. You built this place. Your warmth made it a home. I took that for granted. I see it now." For a moment, I simply looked at her. This woman who had spent years trying to erase me, finally standing in the ruins of her own ego. I didn't feel hatred. I didn't even feel satisfaction. I just felt still. "Thank you for saying that," I finally replied, my voice calm. "That takes courage." Her eyes welled up. "We canceled everything. Your son stood up for you, Ruth. He told everyone we wouldn't host the party. He said this house would never be his without you." Daniel gave a small, sheepish smile. "It was long overdue, Mom." That's when the tears came. Quiet, grateful, human tears. The kind that burn but don't hurt. "I'm "I'm proud of you," I whispered. He nodded. "I think I finally get it now, what you were trying to teach us." "Not teach," I said softly, "just remind." We stayed on that call longer than I expected. They showed me the small dinner they were preparing. Simple roast chicken, mashed potatoes, and the pie recipe I'd written down years ago. Melissa even smiled as she said, "I'm using your crust method this time." When we hung up, I didn't feel empty. I didn't feel lonely. I felt seen. I sat by the fire again, opened my old journal, and wrote in neat, deliberate lines. When people stop seeing your worth, sometimes you have to step away to remind them who you are. You can't pour love into a place that keeps draining it. And when you finally choose peace, the world doesn't end. It begins. That evening, I walked down to the beach. The sky was streaked with pink and gold, and the tide was low. I took off my shoes and let the cold water wash over my feet, grounding me. I thought of my husband, how he'd always told me I was the heart of our home. And for years, I'd forgotten that truth, letting others take pieces of me in the name of family, politeness, and love. Now, standing there in the wind, I realized something important. Love without self-respect isn't kindness. It's self-erasure. I whispered his name, Sam, and smiled to the sky. I finally did it. I took my life back. The wind carried my words out toward the horizon, and for a fleeting moment, I swear I felt him there. That quiet warmth, that unseen approval. Back at the cottage, I poured myself a glass of wine and sat by the fire. My phone buzzed again. This time, it was a text message from Daniel. "Next Christmas, it's just us three. No guests, no chaos. We'll do it your way. Love you, Mom." I stared at the screen, smiling so wide it hurt. My reply was simple. "I love you too. And tell Melissa. Peace looks good on her." I set the phone aside, took a slow sip of wine, and looked into the dancing flames. The sound of the sea filled the background, a low, steady hum that felt like the rhythm of something new beginning. And as midnight came, I stood by the window, watching fireworks bloom faintly in the distance over the water. Red, green, and gold streaks flashed across the sky, their reflections rippling over the ocean's surface. I whispered to the night, "For the first time in years, Christmas feels like mine again." And in that quiet, I knew it wasn't revenge I'd found. It was restoration. Because sometimes, the best revenge isn't anger, it's dignity. It's walking away with your head high while others stumble in the mess they made. It's realizing that peace doesn't ask permission. It simply waits for you to choose it. I closed my eyes, took a deep breath, and let the warmth of the fire seep into my bones. That year, I didn't just take a vacation. I reclaimed myself. And as the waves whispered against the shore, I finally understood. Dignity is the best gift you can give yourself.